Welcome to What's Your Sign? I'm Julia Loken.
I'm Stevie Goldstein.
And I'm the white Gladys of this podcast.
Oh, hell yeah. Orcas, Orca Hive, assemble.
Orcas be orkin.
Yeah.
Dude.
I know. You think? Have you been watching, keeping track? I know you love orcas.
Oh, I've been keeping track. I've been following the updates. They're not stopping, these orcas.
They're not.
Well, I guess they don't sink them every time, but they are pulling the rudders off the boats. I think a lot of luxury yachts. The thing scientists are scared of is because each orca pod speaks their own language. So they're like, oh shit, if they learn how to talk to each other and they start this trend, basically. Yeah, like, hey, did you guys know you could sink
a
boats?
Yeah.
But they're also speculating with these boats because the government is telling them to if they see orcas to turn off their boats to
oh yeah, because the
not,
bubbles.
Yeah, and that these orcas like the bubbles, so they're pissed that they're turning off the boats. So they might need to just try something new because the orcas, I think, are reacting to them turning it off, which they don't like. They just want to keep it on so they can play in the bubbles.
So that is actually something that happens quite frequently, scuba diving. It's something that you get trained on, but animals see the bubbles coming out of your mouth and they come take your regulator. Big mammal animals, sea lions, seals, stuff like that. So it's one of the things that you have to learn how to do when you dive is get your fucking air back.
Fight a sea mammal.
Well, you have an alt source, and it's also just mostly about it's gonna stop bubbling when they take it out of your mouth. So it's more about figuring out how not to panic and getting your thing back or whatever. But it happens a lot, specifically in California, because there's a lot of sea lions and stuff. But that is definitely a thing. I mean, that's another reason the manta ray, which I know you snorkeled with. That's another reason people like diving with them because they really like the bubbles. So they'll come right over your head because they want it to hit their bellies.
Yeah.
So I'm not above that theory,
Yeah, look, orcas, if you didn't know, I'm sure everyone's probably up to date, but the orcas off of the coast of Portugal are rebelling against the boats. Leader of the orca tribe is White Gladys, who is said to maybe have been scorned by a boat, maybe got caught in a fishing line. And so she's teaching the other orca whales to fuck up these boats. I mean, if any animal is going to come for humans, it probably will be an orca. They've never killed anyone in the wild. They do know that we both have intelligence, debatable for humans, but I guess allegedly we are intelligent creatures. But no, it's cool. It's funny because so many people reach out to me about the orcas because I'm a fan, and it doesn't make me want to see them or spend time with them less. I like them more now. You're even cooler than I imagine. We've been fucking up your home, so you're totally allowed to do this. And they still haven't really done what they could do to us. They still are showing that flex of intelligence. There's some TikTok, I'll try to find it, but it was just going through all the stats of orcas and their cliques and how they communicate. And there was they think this also might be a trend. They might just get over it after a while.
The salmon hat.
Yes,
trend.
You saw the salmon hat. For a while, these groups of orcas were putting dead salmons on their heads as fashion. And then they just kind of got over it after 3 months and they all started copying each other. So they have trends.
Yeah. It's also interesting to me that she is the only elder in their pod. So they're all a bunch of young, and I don't know if there's a lot of females in the pod either. I think it's mostly young men. And so I do see there is this kind of from an outsider's perspective and studying behavior, it's there is this respect thing that happens when it's hey, yeah, you can fuck around on our seas, but hey, don't mess with my mom, And it's not that she necessarily birthed them all, but it's that kind of, I think it's a very Cancerian energy too, of this level of respect for an elder woman or a matriarch. And I think that whales definitely have that across the species. There's different, they have different levels of what the mothers do and how they behave and all of those kind of things.
Yeah, they're fully matriarchal, fully grandma. Like White Gladys is like a grandma of a bunch of the whales in that pod. And then it was really cool because I follow these whale boats that take off in Monterey Bay because that's where the orcas come a lot of the time. And that's where I went to go see them. God, it's been a great week for that. They've just been partying, but they had a few days ago about like 5 different matriarch leaders from different pods came to hang out. Like it was very random. It was very random. Like they had a huge party and they were splashing and flipping and like it was like 30 plus orcas, mainly like the head matriarchs and like a few of like their top ranking crew members, and they were all just like kicking it and having a party.
I love that
in the bay.
That's so cool.
So I'm like, but like, how do they transmit this message? Why are they like, oh, we'll meet at Sunday at 9? You know,
I don't even. The ocean is so vast that to me it speaks to like, what do you mean we're all here? Like that's like it, when that happened to me in Chicago. I was like, what do you mean we're all at Cole's bar? Like I can't believe this. Like now we have to have the greatest night of our lives. Like it's like you're in Monterey, I'm in Monterey. I thought you usually came in May. I always come in June.
Our currents got delayed, and now we have to be here now.
Yeah. No, they're just. I mean, who doesn't love the orcas? They're fabulous. They're all over various continents, and respect their asses. You know, I look, I think a lot of us who are into astrology are on team planet needs to reset. And so if that's if that's at the flippers of the orcas, all right, like that's cool. I'll fight with them. I'm like, how do I sign up I will be on your team.
Yeah. Or just be like, hey, okay, cool. If that's you guys get the ocean now. Fine, fair. Like,
wow, you get your home turf.
I'm ready. I'm always ready for someone to come and be like, hey, we're actually taking over this, and there's nothing you can do about it. And
I don't think. I think the idea is, I think there's amphibians, there's things that go in land and on water, but I do think the boats is like the And so I think that reflects a level of intelligence of like, they're not killing humans in the wild. They are breaking boats because boats are polluting our oceans and all of those things. And yes, those are human things, but it's not like somebody swimming or whatever. It's like,
no, never.
You know what I mean? No.
Yes.
Also, they don't like mess with the orcas either. People that swim in the ocean are like, not
like respect you.
Like not.
No, exactly. Well, because
they've even saved people in the wild.
And
what they've seen.
Yeah, a lot of the mammals of the ocean do too. I mean, dolphins and gray whales are really known for like being big defenders.
Yeah,
I mean, it really decreases the property value when someone dies.
No, the whales, they rock, and I think between the orcas taking back their ocean, and I feel like the increase in like alien coverage, I feel like very Saturn and Pisces time, but I feel like those life forces from other worlds, which the ocean absolutely included. Yeah, I think we're going to see tons of wild stuff these next few years. I feel like Saturn and Pisces is just so ripe for that, and it's already really, and plus with Pluto and Aquarius, which I know we just moved back, but that was again a little taste of what we might see more of as it still unfolds. And I think, I think I wouldn't be shocked if we can talk to animals by the end of Pluto and Aquarius in like a very serious way.
Sally, we got to look up ways to keep you alive for the next 20 years. I have so much to ask you.
Right? Just get his like head frozen like Austin Powers, and we'll report back, or Barbara Streisand's cloning or what have you. But the matriarchy, the Cancer season. I can't believe we're getting to Cancer season. Time flies. After a slumpy spring, but Cancer season looks well. How was everyone's Gemini season before I dig into Cancer season?
Well,
any planetary notes that hit or were on the money or jury out?
Mine was not good. I don't really blame the stars, but mine wasn't very good. And I think I've talked about this before on this podcast about like in Destiny cards, how there's this kind of idea of cards getting displaced after their period or whatever. And I do kind of feel like a little bit of that. I've been kind of thrown back into some old cycles too, like obviously against my best like will and better judgment. But just like things coming up, and it definitely like I think I felt it most on the day that Pluto shifted back into Capricorn. So I'm like, oh, like I'm gonna have to do this again for a little while and that kind of thing. And yeah, I don't know. I think I was like happy in the new pattern. So having it go back to something that I'm like, oh, it feels like, I don't know, like I dread it, and no one likes to walk around with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think knowing that there was some like, I don't want to say tough astrology because I know it's always different for people, but I feel like I've had a lot of anticipation about stuff coming up astrologically. And so I think I have not been as present for what's happening currently. And also just been sick and kind of out of time anyways. I think I talked about this in our Discord too, but like not being as attached to time right now, because I also am like, well, I know what I'm doing. All I know is what I'm doing for the next 9 months or whatever, and I know it's caught up now, but there's something about that that's like time almost doesn't matter, and so it's harder to pay attention to what's happening, if that makes sense. And that makes me feel kind of like disconnected, and then I go like, oh, I'm missing out on this transit that's happening. I'm not paying attention or taking advantage of these things or utilizing them or whatever. And then knowing that there's kind of tougher astrology coming up with that Pluto retrograde too, just going like, oh God, this again, both for the collective and for me personally, is just like, well, what old, not fresh hell, what old hell is still around the corner that I'm gonna have to keep doing, that I like thought. It's very much that like whatever I thought I was past, I know is not, but I don't know yet what quite that is yet, but that just kind of like anticipation and like just waiting for that instead of being present with what is happening currently.
I think that's a good reminder. Also, yeah, Gemini season sucks. Like, it's okay. Like, I agree.
I know,
it wasn't that good. Like,
it was bad, guys. It was.
I think that post, I think the eclipsey time, like May, if you will, is so like, got to get out of this. And then you're like, but now I'm just after this thing, and it's not like things magically go away or get better. And I think too, it's like, because we're in the early degrees of Saturn and Pisces, and we're in the late degrees of Neptune and Pisces, is any mutable stuff is getting squared at the beginning of the season and squared at the end of the season by Saturn, who's like, what the fuck? And then Neptune's is like, I'm going to just disappear. Bye. So I think like that accountability or steps to take, like, I feel like so many, myself included, are feeling that like, so what do we do? What's the vibe? Like, I feel like everyone's like waiting for someone to say what the vibe check is, and then no one's coming to do that or say that. And I think too, like, and we'll talk about it at the very end of this episode, because the end of Cancer season is the beginning of Venus retrograde, which is going to be, transit of the season, hot on the lips. Personal planet retrogrades are always big. I mean, when we have like Venus and Mars, because Mercury's a little more common, but the last time we had Venus Leo retrograde, and we'll talk about it when we have the episode about it, was 2015. So yeah, there's been a lot of like things from that era, which feels so long ago, that are also been kind of popping up for me too, that I didn't expect.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I think is good, because I don't want us to like move on with unfinished business or whatever, because I think that we are really in that time where we're collectively, we are wanting new stuff to be moving forward and having this forward motion and all of that. But I think that so much still needs to be addressed or whatever. And I'm trying to get out of that thinking. I think we were talking about this on the last episode about not feeling like you have to fix yourself all the time, or like be whatever, fix all of your problems, that it's okay to be this thing. And I think that also is like present with me too, thinking about these things, is like, well, what are we progressing toward? What am I trying to retread and fix? Is it because I think that at the end of this transit, I won't have problems anymore? Because that's not true. But still that same, this again. This is is this life? Do we just deal with this over and over and over and over again every single time? Mm-hmm. I did see, I'm trying to find quietly the person. I'll find it and we can put it in after. But I did see a vibe that I liked for summer, which was rat girl summer, which is that we are scurrying around, we are eating our little snacks, we are moving, we're going where we please, and having a good time. I'll figure out who did it, but I was like, yes, actually this is the vibe that I like. It was like being comfortable, getting free stuff.
Mm-hmm. I did have a video that has gotten a lot of views on Instagram.
Yeah.
And so while we're talking about
viral
things that how our Gemini season has been and all that, I will go ahead and plug it. So because I do want it to get to 1 million views and I'm only 50,000 from it. So
all right,
if you go on my Instagram page at Lisa Chanou and just watch the video. I'm not even asking you to like it or comment. And if you hate me, you can go in the comments and you can see how many other people feel the same way you do. And so we'll both be feeding our, what is that called? Symbiotic relationship.
Yes.
Actually, no. And also, all I saw was a lot of love on that. And
there is a lot of love, but there is also the typical internet, man person on there.
The bots.
Yes.
Well, I think this was also brought up in the Discord, and I think it's fitting for Cancer season of what you just said, is that crab mentality, the crabs in a bucket, which is the crab bucket effect, being if I can't have it, neither can you. So, not to shade Cancers. I mean, they're easy to shade, but just want to bring that awareness that Cancer can have sometimes of, well, if this sucks, like everything sucks, or like if I don't know, crabs have that, like they are shifty, and also Cancer rising, Cancer Mars here. I can say it. I know this game, but if you think of crabs in a bucket, like they could work together in a group, but then someone's going to be left at the bottom, so they're going to fuck it up for everybody. So maybe if, I don't know, just leaving that piece of info, because like I think that can be Cancer.
Yeah.
And I think since too, so many industries, so much is, societally kind of shitty right now. I think it is a good reminder that we can get out of our shittiness if we work together and help each other. And I don't know. It's been like, so, especially working in entertainment, like no one wants to like recommend people right now, because first of all, there's strikes happening, but also like, what if I lose that job because there's not
scarcity?
So scarcity.
Scarcity is afoot, and
I mean that is Cancer energy too, on a low side of like holding on to what you have for dear life and not refusing to let it go, and also that kind of like outgrowing something, being a little bit too like needing to come out of your shell and move into a bigger new space, but also not wanting to be vulnerable and unprotected in that moment that it requires us to do when you like leave the comfort of what even if it's uncomfortable and too tight and not the right place anymore.
I do think that there is a value for recognizing scarcity, and I think that one of the things that's really difficult about this time that we're in right now is that it seems like a lot of the actual scarcity of resources is being like Neptune pulled over our eyes, and like they're not actually telling us how things are actually going, because there's elections coming up and because they're campaigning and this and that, and not like the government, like conspiracy style stuff, but I just feel like it sucks that translates into people being like fear of scarcity, which I think is kind of a different thing. And so I do think if you are like a Cancer person that gets those feelings a lot, like I have a Cancer moon and I definitely I mean, I see it happening at my work and stuff, and I definitely feel like a visceral reaction to that. And I definitely sometimes behave in ways that aren't my highest, vibe or whatever. But I do think that, like, if that is something you have a talent for doing, like, let's start like serving people in our friend group and seeing like what industries are experiencing this and trying to figure out like more like causal things that we can actually change, rather than saying like, well, I'm not going to recommend a friend for my job because like then I won't have a shift or whatever. Like, if that's your instinct, like, talk to other people and see what other places are like, and kind of, I don't know. I feel like recognizing that it's happening is not a bad thing, because it is happening on a grand scale. And I am going into grocery stores and there's sometimes out of stuff, and it's happening in other ways too. And so take it on, and not in that personal way if you can.
Well, I think the big like phrase that came up for me in looking at the Cancer season transits was like choosing compassion, because I think that is that thing of like, instead of the scarcity being recognizing the scarcity, seeing that it's there, going, oh, this is probably affecting everyone in this thing. What can I do to maybe not even fix it, but to reach out to someone else, assuming that this is happening in their industry too, connecting in a way, or at the very least not getting, like you were saying, that crabs in a bucket kind of thing of like, well, I'm experiencing hardship, and so that gives me license to be however I want, knowing that everyone is doing that. So if we all kind of are like, oh, everybody's going through it, like we need to be extra nice to everyone, or extra thoughtful, extra helpful, whatever, because no one has extra right now, whatever that means. So not necessarily putting yourself out or giving more than you have or whatever, but just being like, I don't know, that we can commiserate in that, we can be there for each other, we can be kind at the very least, and knowing that stuff is out at the store. Maybe you're not going to have as many people available, whatever that means, but just that, like, I don't know, because there's some tough, the main thing, if we want to start getting into them, one of the big things that stood out to me as just like kind of a recurring theme are these Chiron aspects. And I think that there is going to be stuff that is like, especially because we have that Pluto retrograde now too, that is kind of like poking old wounds, that is going to make us feel particularly vulnerable and sensitive, and like we might want to be more defensive, or be, feel entitled to say, oh, this hurt me, like I'm hurting, I need to, whatever that is, instead of it being kind of, I don't know, an opportunity to go, oh man, I hurt, so everybody hurts, or whatever.
Yeah. And I think a final thought on that train of thought too is we might need to start over, but it doesn't mean that you're behind. Like, I think, and again, back to the Leo Venus retrogrades, that will be the end treat of this Cancer, of the emotional Cancer season, is, yeah, like, it doesn't matter how likable you are, how this, like, maybe there is something further you need to learn or go, or a skill you need to take on, or owning whatever it is that you're trying to put out there too. Because I think, yeah, Cancer can be like, oh, that's what you sort of said of like, oh, we're all suffering. Well, like, I'll check myself out, but we really can't afford to do that at this time. And it can feel very much like, let's just lay down all our arms and like collectively quit. But like, we can't. Like,
I had such a big sigh of breath of relief when you just said that, of the like not being behind, because I think that is that same, like, we're so used to feeling this pressure that's like go, 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 go. But if we are trying to change things, then we do have to kind of be still for a little bit. That doesn't mean still not do the things that you have to do. And if there is forward momentum available to you, obviously, pursue that and everything. But we are in a changing, rebuilding kind of time. And I think a lot of our, I'm thinking more kind of capitalistically wise, but that like, a lot of the ways that we've been able to succeed and to do stuff has been really detrimental to ourselves and to the planet and to each other and to, whole groups of people and stuff like that. And so I think that a lot of it is also being there for ourselves, like you said, of going like, oh, it is that kind of regulation of I'm not behind. This is just different. And so it might feel like no motion. It might feel like failure. It might feel like letting someone take something that feels like I'm entitled to or whatever, but we are rebuilding here. We're remaking these new systems where people don't have to feel like that. Hopefully. I know that might be a little pie in the sky, but that should be at least our goal of trying to dismantle some of these, even if it's only in our own hearts.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I've Saturn moving through the ninth house right now. I'm feeling all of these things of, especially as, everyone sticks around with astrology and can kind of track these things. This keeps going. Like we have these things come back, it repeats. And I do think because this is our last full month before Venus retrograde, that this is like really good. And maybe not long, maybe it's not going to be launching, but I think it is like at least getting some assessments of just like where you're at, what's feeling good, what's sustainable. I know a lot of people are making cuts and adjustments to their lives, whatever it might be in terms of finances or living situation or whatever. And I think that that's really, encouraged. We have more light, we have more daylight to do the things that we want to do. So hopefully that gives us a little more space to even think about those things.
I think interestingly too, I mean, talking about scarcity and the upcoming Venus retrograde, I think Venus Leo, it can be like a really, and I don't mean this in like a personality sense, but like as far as your physical looks go, I think it can be kind of like showboaty. Like it wants to have a really like fun hairstyle or a very like very time intensive like eyeliner or something where it's like you want to look like stunning. And I think with that retrograde coming up to like remind yourself that if you are feeling that, like if you're feeling yourself and you want to do like great eyeliner, go do it. But when Venus goes retrograde later on and it's not sustainable for you to do that every day for work, like that's not like demanded of you.
Mm-hmm.
And like some of those things, it's more about just like maintaining, like your nighttime routine or whatever makes it easier so that you don't look tired or something. I think that using this time to where I think the instinct is to embellish and to be, using that to build confidence instead of using it as something that's like a mask that covers something up or distracts or whatever. Because when later on, when it goes retrograde and you don't have time to like, whatever, say do your eyeliner like that anymore, then you're still going to have the mole that you don't want people to look at or that, you know what I mean? Like, so it's about using those things to, I don't know, draw attention to you in a way that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Which Chiron transits, Julia, were you referencing?
Well, we have this, it's just active in kind of everything because we get squared. We kind of get a little bit of everything, I think, with this one. At the beginning, we have a Mercury sextile to Chiron on the first day of Cancer season, the 21st. And then followed by a Mars trine to Chiron, which are, positive ones. And then we get later in the month, we get some squares. And it's just that like at that same degree. And there's just something to me that feels like we're going to kind of like feel that from all angles, literally speaking. But I feel like that Chiron's kind of been like in the background for several seasons too. I mean, it's always in the background. What am I talking about?
It's going retrograde during Cancer season, right?
I don't have the station on here, but I believe that you're correct.
It might be on, it's the 19th. It might be just before, but it will be retrograde for, it's July 19th, actually. Yeah.
Okay. So right before that. So, I mean, even more. So it's like we're setting up for those things. And I think that'll be interesting having that during that Venus retrograde too, even though we're going to be getting maybe some positive aspects from Chiron to Venus. We have a trine too, but also that like,
don't listen to me. I was looking at a 2022.
Oh, okay.
So don't listen to me at all.
LOL.
But, okay.
No, but we start with this sextile from Mercury, and then a trine from Mars on the 22nd. Sun moves into Cancer on June 21st at 7:58 a.m. at least here in Los Angeles.
Summer solstice.
Summer solstice.
Officially summer.
Yeah. And Mercury is still in Gemini at that time. So we're getting, what else? Is there any more Chiron that week? Yeah, we get the Venus trine to Chiron on the 29th. So I mean, I think that this is a little bit of a easier first week. And then we get a square later in the month when Mercury moves into Cancer. And then we'll have some other stuff in Cancer too that squares off. But
that also on June 22nd in asteroid news, we're gonna have Juno move into Cancer and Vesta into Gemini. So just some fun facts. Juno is sometimes the asteroid of where we might find things about like marriage or love. If you keep matching with, let's say a Cancer and it's like nothing of this is in my chart, check your Juno, because sometimes that can be like a secret love sort of space. So also, maybe home stuff and domesticating things that are like a little more rooted down might be taking the forefront. And then Vesta is also kind of like a feminine asteroid with Gemini. So maybe really like gathering with community, like having more home hangs, #recession summer, like kind of on track.
With Vesta too, she's the goddess of the hearth or the hearth. I don't know how you say it, but basically the fireplace. And I guess it might be more considered like the mantle. But I think it's interesting considering like the wildfires that are happening right now and what like type of community we need to build and what structure we have to build in order to maintain like warmth in our home without burning the house down. And I think that might be an interesting conversation in more of like the global environmental aspect, in the air quality aspect, in the, like I know when we have fires here, it's like, which friends have AC and who has a pool. And it's like, this person has their open invite and this person like says, come over on Saturday. And it's having that community and those things in place. So I think that might be interesting for Gemini too, because it's your neighborhood and your friends kind of and siblings and those things.
Totally.
We also get in this first, I'm looking at this, I'm trying to go week by week, as we've said. We get a Mercury square to Neptune right before Neptune stations retrograde as well. Again, in this kind of same feeling of talk about retreading and going, if you've been having anything at those, 26, 27 of anything mutable, or not mutable, but anything at 26, 27, you've been getting a Neptune aspect. And I think that slowing down too is only going to kind of add to some of this confusion, unclarity. This is a time, I think, again, all of these things we've been just reiterating this idea of it really being how do you be there for yourself and each other when you kind of aren't necessarily feeling like you're making the progress that you want, that you're able to assert yourself in the way that you want, or things aren't going a clear direction. And that's right before Mercury moves into Cancer on the 26th, which I think will be kind of, I don't know, nice. I think it might help us to again be a little more sensitive in our feels, or be thinking in that way in a more kind of maybe not so much like a fun, witty, we're talking way, but in a like, let's really, I don't know, say something, or a good time to be journaling, to be doing something creative and a little less expressive in a wordy way, in a more kind of feelings, emotive way.
Yeah, I think Cancer is we kind of see it with the switch from like earth to air, fire, water, but like, Taurus being a slower season, Cancer naturally a little more slower season. So also like Mercury and Cancer having that, just like wanting to get to it rather than just kind of fill space. Maybe it is taking some beats away if you want to like make it count. If that's it. I feel like I'm already, and I know we're recording a little bit before Cancer season starts, I feel like I'm already like getting overwhelmed with like social outreach from people where I'm like, wait, I feel like I still have like shelves I need to put up, or like things I need to do that make me feel more at home with myself. So that might pop up for more people, especially as we're in Cancer season.
Yeah, I think Mercury and Cancer too, it's not direct communication, and it's really tough coming after Gemini because that's where it's so comfortable being direct and funny and chatty and all of those things. And like Stevie said, maybe Cancer isn't quite like, obviously Mercury's not quite as comfortable here. So maybe it is about taking a step back. But I think it's also leading with, which I think Cancers are really good at doing this. It's just hard for others to, because their feelings change, their moods change. It's hard to know from the outside, but I think leading with what you know, which is a lot of times it is those more feeling things of like, oh, like, you know, someone's like, say they're having like a going away party thing at work or something, then it's harder to say like, well, I know that it's going to be okay because like blah, 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 blah. But it's much easier to say, I feel scared or like, I'm going to miss you or those things. And so sticking to those like feeling things, the things that feel right to you and what you know, I think is going to be really valuable for Mercury Cancer because it's not its favorite spot.
Yeah.
And that's on the 26th.
That's on the 26th. Yeah. And we have some nice stuff, I think, at the beginning, which I think, you know, presumably nice. Again, whenever you're looking at a trine to anything, that's maybe, you know, nice in an astrology book, but that also means that this energy is working well together. So when things are, you know, depending on the system that's functioning, we get a sense trine to Saturn. And I think we've had some tough Saturn aspects, as you said, Stevie, with the Gemini in Gemini season with the Sun and Mercury. And we get a Venus that's on the 28th. And then we get that Venus trine to Chiron on the 29th. And a Mercury trine to Saturn as well. So Mercury and the Sun are pretty close together right now, as always, but they're really there because they're getting ready to have a Cazimi on the 30th at 9 degrees of Cancer. So I think that like, I don't know, that to me is very, like you said, Lisa, of like leading with what you're feeling, leading with what's true in that moment, even if it's kind of vulnerable or not as based in something witty or something, but something honest, something sensitive, something more feelings based, I think is really, you know,
it's
well suited for this
instead
time.
of lying about something that you don't know is true or whatever to try to make someone feel better, you just say what is true, what is there. And I think that Mercury trine to Saturn that's a good day, especially I think as a follow-up from our most recent Mercury retrograde. I do think a Mercury trine to Saturn to me speaks to like actual things moving forward, advancement, like news that actually helps us make something better. Like, you know, when they put out the census and it's like, oh, we actually know that like this X, Y, and Z are happening. And therefore we know we can put a cooling station here for like unhoused people in the summer or whatever, like things that actually beget action. So I do think that's a good day to keep an eye on the news because there might be, and obviously like it might be, our news here isn't like you're not going to be getting sunshines and rainbows, but it might be something that inspires you to act or provides you some context for, say, what's going on at work or in a relationship.
Hey, I've been loving the news lately. Trump arrested, like
I know.
indicted. I'm
but
like,
that's what I'm saying. Like even building on
maybe.
that, like if we could even, you know, like like building on those things and more news, more of those. Like I love seeing the photos of like the document piles or whatever. But it's like, God, you know, there might be somebody on TikTok that looks at that and goes, "Wait a second, I know this, this, and like they look at it and they're like, "This is actually that," and then it's. Oh, from that photo, it's like something we build on to make more news and forward motion.
Yeah.
And I think this is all a good reminder too, since don't know if it's been said, but happy Pride Month. We'll be wrapping up Pride Month in June, but it's Pride all year. And we've seen so much horrible, racist, closed-minded, homophobic bullshit in the United States. And if this has been pissing you off, like we need everyone to run for office, like volunteer, do what you need to do. Like I think we kind of talked about in the beginning, like we can't just roll over.
It's not going anywhere. It's it's here.
The call's coming from inside the house and it's fucked up. So I think too, we can take that, you know, Cancer, not naturally happy in Mars, not naturally happy in confrontation, but it's because I think Cancer does care so much and it can just like, I think just steam on what it cares about. So I think using that passion, you know, Cancers are some of the most passionate people I know because they actually can't think about how someone else might feel in a situation. So I think if that's been you this past month feeling frustrated, like what can you actually try and Saturn do?
Well, I think that's also a good reminder that Cancer is still a cardinal sign, and this is a thing as much as it could be
action.
taking action. And even if it's like what Lisa was saying of like saying the thing that you're feeling in the moment of like, you know, maybe you don't want to get into an argument with your homophobic family member or something, but you could say, this makes me really sad or something like that, you know, and I think sometimes taking that kind of personal, heart feelings kind of way of it's like, this isn't a theoretical kind of thing that we're having. This is something that's like genuinely hurting my feelings or something along those lines. I don't know. That's maybe not, that's maybe like,
well, yeah, it's like, well, why? It's like, I think more people need to know, like, are you trying to fight? Like, because sometimes it's simple as that. Like, you're saying things that would start a fight. Is that what you're trying to do? Or do you not know how stupid you are? Like, because let's figure that out. Because if you don't know that you're starting fights or saying things, we talked about it. Shout out again in our Discord. What's your sign? Podcast on Patreon. But you can come to our Discord and chat, and because we go over lots of stuff, things from the podcast that gets mentioned or things that just come up in our lives. But I had a friend who was going on dates, and she's like, "How do I deal with people hating on astrology?" And we kind of all came to the consensus of like, so you're trying to make me feel bad on this date. Like, do you think that's good? Whether you care about this or not, like ultimately you are trying to shit on something I care about. So, and that could be replace that with anything. Now, of course, hopefully it's something hateful or evil, but you get it. Yeah.
But I do think that like going to action, that's one of the, I like literally looked up the definition of compassion.
What did it say?
Well, it was like feeling, it was like empathy plus action, something, or sympathy plus action, something where you are identifying with how someone else is feeling that spurs you to want to do something about it. And I think that is very Cancerian to me too, where it is the like, I'm feeling, I see that you're hurting and I want to do something about it, even if it's just, you know, be there with you, sit with you, give you a hug, cry with you, you know, whatever. But it is to do something, not just to go, I understand how you're feeling.
And I think that's a good reminder, only because it's come up for me and some other people in my life lately, is like Cancer can have such the energy of the words and actions like matching, if like they care about something. So if there's been things in your life where it's like the words aren't lining up with the actions or vice versa. Also, I think something that might bubble up again as and we'll get to it, bracing for that Venus retrograde. Which is going to put a lot of things into perspective because she does do though.
Well, I think that is a good one. It's a good question to again be like asking ourselves too of all of this. And I think that that's like what those Chiron transits made me think of too, of the like, are you, because it's in Aries. And I looked at the Sabian symbol too, and it is also about compassion. It's a girl feeding birds in the winter, and the like subtext is basically like life provides us with never-ending opportunities to choose love and to do like something kind or whatever. And so I think all of those things is like to have that in our heads and hearts of like, instead of, we don't need more like tough love on people or whatever it is. It's like we need people to like feed each other and hug each other and do something. Again, not if someone's doing something heinous and whatever, not enabling or coddling and, you know, so on and so forth. But that like, let this thing that's making you angry soften you into doing something about it to ease suffering somewhere.
Yes, I love that. Wait, what day are we on now?
We're on, I'm on, let's say we're on, I kind of jumped ahead to the 30th where we have that Sun conjunct Mercury and Neptune stations retrograde that same day, which that just made me think
that
of
adds into it all too.
But I even am wondering if some of that retrograde is kind of going over things that were unclear, that might be like kind of, I don't know, fog rolling back, thinking especially of like the Trump case of like kind of revealing some stuff. So to me, that was like feeling like maybe more unclarity, but also could be the opposite when Neptune is moving backwards. Maybe we are losing some fog.
I think of it as like taking us out of the facade or like the muck or like the haze. It's like, I think a clearer Neptune is how I interpret it. So I think this is helpful considering this kind of buildup we already have early in Cancer season of, you know, coming back to the self, coming back to like what's feeling like home and right in us. So
Yes.
and with that Kazemi that same day with Mercury and this communication and sun and self, it's very on the nose.
Mm-hmm. And then that next day on the 1st, we get a sextile, Mercury sextile to Jupiter and a sun sextile to Jupiter, not at the same degree because Mercury is, faster than the sun and is speeding along, but pretty close. And so that feels like it still can be kind of in there. I think anytime something is conjunct the sun, there is the danger of it kind of being blown out by the sun, as the sun is the biggest, brightest, sort of thing. But I think it also is getting that light shown on it. And even if to me that if it's just like if you've been having a hard time with someone and it's kind of like, I don't want to say you don't need to talk about it, but that like idea of like, oh, and you can put it aside for that day and just have a nice day together, and that reminds you why you like each other, and then that makes talks going forward better because you've had this, I don't know, energy lifted. Do you know what I mean?
Trust.
Yeah, a thing where you go like, okay, maybe this isn't as dire as I thought, or whatever.
It is interesting, the Kazemi aspect of it, because it's in the heart of the sun, right? And it's like, that is something that you kind of tell people is like, I'll hold you in my heart, or like and I think it is something we do when that's weighing heavy on my heart when we're like keeping something private. It's so, I do think it's interesting that it's reflected in the sky that way as well.
Yeah, like it feels like the TikTok, like, can I just be mean for a second? Which just is like, may I bitch, may I complain? And it's like, yes, you may. Or I think too, we talk a lot about like therapy talk and how we're kind of like self-censoring with this like intellectualism. And I think Cancer is not really that. It's just like, I know this doesn't feel like, I know this is intellectually wrong what I'm feeling, but I feel it and I just need to get this out or say it, which is okay. Again, do no harm, like safe space, like consensualness, but we can't always be that like self-censoring too.
Well, and feelings, I think so much of like what Cancer energy is about, we just talked about this in the moon one, is that like feelings pass and they don't go and like don't stop the flow of that. And so if you're able to ride the momentum of your feelings, both good and bad, whatever that means, how can you take action on feelings if you're also stifling those? It goes both ways. If you aren't riding that crest, you aren't sharing them, you aren't letting the ones that are maybe more difficult kind of pass through, well, then we're holding on to that and that's stuck and it's weighing us heavy down and it's not letting us ride these other feelings either.
Totally.
Following that, we have Venus square to Uranus on July 2nd, which I believe we'll have several of.
Yeah, any of like
we'll have stuff. Yes, we will, because it stations retrograde at 28 degrees. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I feel like this is kind of energy that's not exactly the same, but that Leo Taurus square energy we're kind of familiar with from all of the fixed action that we've gotten over the past couple years. But I think again another one of like, what are we doing? What are we changing? Where can we grow? And where are those? I love the eyeliner, makeup example, because it is very like, okay, well, what if this can't, what are the things that we can't change? And how do you move forward, with the circumstances as they are or whatever? How do you still find confidence? How do you still find kindness in those moments?
Do you remember last summer, the flights and stuff? That everything, I think we might see a repeat of that. I think we haven't necessarily had news about Southwest Airlines, this many flights or whatever, but it's this weird 4th of July weekend. But it's also like, I don't know if it's being observed on that Monday, I guess it's just on the 4th, but are people taking the time off, or is people celebrating the following weekend? Like, people love to go out of town that holiday. I'm not necessarily celebrating it myself, but I just think that it's like hard to, I've been looking at, because my anniversary is around that time, I've been looking at like hotels and stuff just in the area, and everything's super pricey and weird. And so I do think it's that same kind of thing of like, what happens if you can't go on your camping trip? Like, are you just going to let all of the food you bought like go to waste, or are you going to have like people over to your house and cook hot dogs or whatever the thing is? And like, that's an easy like example, but I do think that there are other things that might be bigger and more difficult that come up around that Venus square Uranus. It is like, what do you value more, actually having fun this weekend or getting to Yosemite or whatever? It's that.
Yeah. Well, we've been seeing, at least this week, I feel like so many airlines have been running flash deals, book a flight, book a flight, book a flight. And then hotels are really expensive. And like, I think people have adjusted some of their plans and expectations. Cause like, I know I've had a few friends who are like, yeah, I was going to go to Portugal, but like, I can wait till the low season. This is a little, it's a little much. So I think and especially with Leo, I think Leo and Taurus have just such good taste, like such high bar of like how they want the experience to go, that it's like, so what are we going to sacrifice so that it's like going to be good? Because I think there is going to have to be a little bit. Square is like, both of you want something. I don't think you both can have it. So what are we going to negotiate that we want to keep as part of this thing?
We've been talking about this a lot with like housing prices and housing market and stuff like that, of like the idea of like, if you pay for something that is not worth that, then that sets that up. Like, we shouldn't be doing those things. I know it's a disappointment to not get to go to the place that you want or be at the place that you want, but that's too much for that. That's not, we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be setting that kind of precedent. And I think
or supply and demanding or whatever. I also think like thinking of, okay, it's Taurus and Leo is like thinking of the animals. And I'm trying to think in like a traffic sense, right? Like, what happens when the bull meets the lion? Like, we're not going anywhere. Like, especially like I'm thinking driving, people stuck in things, all that kind of stuff. Lion's not letting up. Bull's probably not like trying to fight. It's just a whole, I don't know.
Yep. Well, and then we have that full moon in Capricorn on the 3rd, which isn't aspecting a ton. If I'm correct, unless I'm absolutely wrong. But no, I mean, we get the full range of that Capricorn. The full moon itself is not aspecting much. But I think, again, just that kind of like a Capricorn moon coming in and being like, well, this is the reality of it. This is what, sorry, like dad says we can't. And, that's kind of austere and maybe not as fun, but also what does that bring up for us? How are people responding to that? How are people, feeling when they can't do something that they want to do? And maybe that won't be the case. Maybe it will also be a kind of like a reality in a way where it's like, hey, this isn't that serious or that bad or whatever. Let's, kind of pull ourselves out of a mood and still make the best of a situation. But
I'm also so grateful for the full moons of late, because I think, because in my mind, I've been doing so much like astrology of math and what's coming up. And when people tell me their signs, and I can be like, oh, look, the eclipses are coming here for you or whatever. But with the full moons, you really do get signs that you don't normally get to see during the season or whatever, because it's an opposition, and a lot of the the outer planets don't move super fast. So it's like, we don't have much happening in Capricorn right now. I'm grateful to see the moon there. I think that Capricorn's influence, and I think this happens with every full moon, not just this one, but like that influence might be needed here. If we are feeling some of those more Cancery, like I've been trying to tell them how I feel and nothing. It's like Capricorn's going to come in with the fact and say, this is it, go do this, So I do think some of that full moon energy is like, it's really hitting for me these days.
Capricorn moon's very like, so where do you see yourself next summer? I think it brings back in that, even though we're rooting down in Cancer season, Capricorn is such the forward thinking, both cardinal, opposite signs, but of the long-term sort of stuff too. So I think, like how we're feeling or what's bubbling up that 4th of July weekend here in the States might also be like, would you want to be doing exactly this time next year, or what would you want to see different? So I think, we're always going to have a Capricorn full moon in Cancer season, but I do think Capricorn energy is a refresher since we don't really get much else of that besides, of course, Pluto, but we're over,
Yeah.
it's been, we've been there.
And I think the fact that Capricorn kind of goes through and aspects all of these other players that we've been seeing in there in a kind of opposite, or helpful way. Like we get that trine to Uranus at the end of the day. Again, not exact in the full moon, but since the moon moves so quickly, we start with a trine to Jupiter. We get, the oppositions to the Cancer. We get a square to Chiron at that same 19 degrees. Again, a sensitive kind of, how else can we approach this wound? I think, again, like you said, of a like necessary kind of facts reality check. Is this here's the story you've been telling yourself? Is this what's actually true? Is this what's helpful? Is this what's going to move us forward? How do we move, kind of keep going? And then that trine to Uranus at the end of the day too, of kind of like that, to me speaks really to making the best of whatever we're going through. That it's kind of starts off maybe as a more dour day, but ends up being something cool. I also have been really liking that we're getting the full moons before the new moons in our seasons, because I feel like at the beginning of the year we had those new moons like right on, not literally the first, but it would be like we're starting and it's a new moon and I'm like, I'm not ready for a new moon. I need to like purge first and then we can do something new. So I like these full moons coming where it's like, let's get this all out and then now I can think about something new.
It feels very cleansing, cleaning out the closet, what's not you anymore. Capricorn is telling a very like earthy story too, of like, how do you want to be even perceived? So I think if things just don't even fit or feel like you, it's like a good like reason to be like, why are you holding on to this old nostalgic stuff, Cancer? And we'll talk more about the full moon on Patreon as well.
Yes, of course, where we talk about all full moons and new moons. Mercury is moving real quick too, because we get a Mercury square to Chiron the next day, a sextile to Uranus already going from 19 to 21 degrees. On the 5th, we get that square to Chiron. On the 6th, we get a sextile to Uranus at 21 degrees. And then by the 9th, we're already at 27 degrees of Cancer. So I think that there also, to me, is something in this of like, when you have those kind of honest where you're at feelings wise, how quickly you can move if we just, again, like move through that, let that kind of flow through us, how fast we're going. It's not, I think is encouraging to all of us. On the 9th, we get a trine to Neptune too. So I think, again, that's another one of that, like kind of fog lifting, getting some clarity, or saying, oh, this is how I felt. Oh my God, this is how you felt. This is how I felt. And now we can, whatever. I'm doing a lot
I
of
also sometimes I think those trines sometimes too are like, you know what? I'm not looking at it. I don't care. I'm fucking to not looking at email today. I know that whoever the fuck has some shit to say to me, but I'll check it out tomorrow.
Yeah. And
I think that's, again, not avoidance to the never looking at the email, but giving yourself the boundary and saying like, meh, not today.
I like that, because the next day on the 10th, Mars moves into Virgo. And that to me is very much like it can be, this isn't on today's list. It can be on tomorrow's list and we're still going to get it done with, just as long as we're getting stuff done. Is this a today priority, or can this be, next time?
Yeah. And totally. I think that like that kind of attitude is really kind of gross to us right now, because we've seen people be so selfish in that way of putting on blinders, but it's like, use it to your advantage in this situation.
And certainly if it's keeping you in a way where, again, we can be so inundated with stuff that it's keeping you from moving forward or getting anything done,
doing anything at all.
Exactly. That kind of like overload fatigue sort of thing. The same day on the 10th, we get Mars moving into Virgo. Mercury is going to oppose Pluto at 29 degrees and 24 minutes of Cancer and Capricorn respectively. And then Mercury will leave that day and move into Leo, which again, I think is like that, now we're really ushering into, Venus is already in Leo at this time, but we are really kind of ushering into this Venus retrograde period where we're talking about these things. We're kind of getting some clarity. We're thinking about that Leo area of our chart at this time. We've been kind of getting value hints Venus stuff going on, but now we're kind of, I don't know, thinking, talking. That's where our mind's at. And I think that makes sense as the impending retrograde gets closer and closer at that point.
And I think it was Kira Taborn who brought this up on the astrology podcast, but like Venus, as Julie mentioned, Mars moves into Virgo. So we're never going to have Venus with Mars this whole time. I think the last Venus retrograde with Leo, they were together. So I think a little more that want-need alignment, where I feel like I like that there's like a practical, well, we'll see if we like it, right? But I like this practical Virgo Mars too, that's really about what's doable and sustainable. And then Leo being that kind of big, grandiose drama vision too. And I think, a little late in the game to mention, but must in Cancer season is like, we have not had cardinal energy around in like a while too. So I think that there's a lot of like shake up to like move some things around, but then also like we are on the edge of like cleaning out, reflecting, and like maybe trimming down as well if we are a bit overloaded. Because Leo's not really like, Leo and Virgo aren't very like, I don't think of them as like multi-hyphenates, like I think of them as really wanting to really focus on one thing at a time. And I think that's how they get so good at the things that they like to invest their energy in.
I think too, it's really valuable if we can view astrology. And we talked about this with the houses, and I think we talk about it all the time, but maybe not in such clear terms of the one thing is supposed to lead to the next. It's supposed to build on each other. So to have the energy of Leo present in one way while the energy of Virgo is present in another, all it does is inform you what to have, like how to transmute that energy for when that Venus does move into Virgo. Rather than just the two planets aligning, it actually gives you a little bit of perspective on both. And to think that, at least for this time being, that Venus is informing the sun in Cancer as well. So when we are going to get a retrograde at the end and the sun will probably meet Venus, I don't know, I haven't looked that far, but they'll at least be in the same sign together. It is something that is like, hey, we're giving you a heads up for the quiz in your other class or whatever. Like it kind of, I don't know, like, hey, I have Mr. H for English and like he's doing a pop quiz today. It's like, oh, good. Well, I'm a little bit ahead of the game because I've already been, looking at this or whatever.
That made me think of a bunch of things and I love it. On the 12th of July, we get a sun square to Chiron. Again, that thing which I think is interesting as we get to the end and thinking about what you were just saying about everything leading to one another, because during Cancer season, the sun is answering to the moon because the sign of Cancer is ruled by the moon. And so we are kind of feeling that fluctuation and all of that. And I think learning to navigate that and be present for those shifts is part of kind of our lesson during Cancer season, leading us into Leo season where the sun is ruled by the sun. But that kind of like, how do we stay consistent knowing about all of this fluctuation that's still happening within us? How do we like try to find consistency there? And then that Venus retrograde. But I think that this sun square to Chiron here at the end is kind of that, like, I don't know, to me, again, that reminder of like, things are always going to hurt us or we're going to be sensitive. There's always a reason to, I don't know, those things don't necessarily go away, but they can get easier. We can learn tools to deal with them, but it is, again, that kind of idea of like, not to rid ourselves of that. We never can. And it's actually a strength and a useful thing that keeps us in touch with that compassion. I hope. Again, that's an easy thing to say because that stuff sucks. And, I'm not looking forward to a lot of this Chiron stuff. It's hitting my chart directly too, which is also, probably should have said that at the beginning about why I was like, oh boy, this Chiron stuff is really standing out to me. But
I think for you, you're very blessed and it's tough, but it's hard when you're having to take care of something or you're having a baby and it's like you have to reflect on the way you were raised, and that's really tough. Like, regardless of how easy or how difficult it was for you growing up, like right now you're having to think about that all the time. Like, well, my parents didn't have a Carsey like this, or even like the smallest things that
Yeah,
you never thought you'd have to worry about. So,
or no matter what you do, it makes you think of a thing that you did or didn't do, or a thing that you are going to do, or want
my
to do,
kid's
not
gonna
want
do
to do.
this thing
Yes.
I did just like me, and I would, those kind of things. So
Yes.
it's nice to have, it's nice to have moments of reflection and all of that stuff, but it's also really tough. So of course Chiron's present for you.
Something that's a trip is realizing that my child will have Chiron in their chart and going like, oh my God, am I their Chiron? Like,
well, and let me tell you something. Yes, as someone who has a great relationship with their mother, yeah, you are. and also their sun, and also their Venus and their Jupiter and the Mars. Sometimes it's all of it.
Yes, but it is that like, oh, okay, I'm gonna do my best to fix my Chiron things, so hopefully they aren't the same Chiron for you, but also knowing no matter, and we all have a Chiron no matter what, and you can't avoid that, but you can learn how to, like, learning how to deal with your own, I think empowers you to be able to tell someone else how they can possibly deal with their Chiron, knowing that it will be different wounding. But
no, it's not you, just blame it on a past life. That's what I always do. This ain't this lifetime. This is ancient wounds.
I love it. I think the end of Cancer season, we get a little bit of I wouldn't say kind of quieter. Oh, I don't know. I've got a lot of notes. I've got a lot of notes still.
I'm like, hey, July 17th. We
that new
changes, and with the new moon, that's big old day.
That new moon is also going to square Chiron at that same degree. Mercury is going to square Jupiter that day. It's going to trine Neptune. It's going to oppose Pluto. That, again, that same thing, because we're in that cardinal season. It just is hitting everything the same way that full moon in Capricorn did. So I think and like you said, the node shift too. So I think it's going to feel very,
and
new semester.
My anniversary.
Yes.
Always. There's always this year. It's like anything I have. The sky's like, do you though? But you though?
Oh my God. The eclipse though, the nodes changing on your anniversary as like a closing the chapter. I mean, not closing the chapter, but that to me is because the eclipse has been so present in your marriage story. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
But that's a big deal. We've already had a little taste of Aries eclipse energy. We'll get a little more this fall, but officially nodal changeover. And
we've mentioned it, we still have one more eclipse in Taurus in October. So we're not fully out, but the nodes will have shifted, which also means we're getting rid of that. I think Jupiter has still been pretty close to the North Node for a lot of this too. It will have moved further away. But I think we've been having that really feel still like we're in Taurus Scorpio axis. And I think this is the kind of move, which makes sense that we then go into that Venus retrograde period in Leo, because I do think that is the, like, not antidote, but I think that in that kind of like T-square energy, it is a newer forward, the sun, what's consistent, what's remained from that energy. On the 20th, we get a sun trine to Neptune and a Mars opposite Saturn.
Another great day to not do it. This is my advice. Every single thing I hear, I'm like, oh yeah, just, you know what? Don't look at it or don't do it.
Yeah. A day.
Motivation might be a little low.
Yeah. Keep your calendar light, I would say.
Truly, though, almost anything
for sure.
Can wait a day. I mean, a day, and what a difference a day makes.
Well, I think here we've been experiencing a lot of the cloud and rainy stuff too, and especially with those Neptune transits. And it's such a nice reminder, because we don't live in somewhere like New York where people have rain and weather all the time, that it's like, oh yeah, you can just take a day off work or like not go in today because you don't feel like driving.
Yeah. Or that's just like too much. That's too much work.
And if you drive around, everyone clearly is doing it. Nobody's out.
Yeah. And then on the final day of Cancer season, the 21st of July, we get a sun opposite Pluto at that 29 degrees, 8 minutes of Cancer and Pluto and Capricorn respectively. And Mercury will trine Chiron at that 19 degrees, 58 minutes of Leo and Aries, respectively. The next day, the sun will still be in Cancer for a portion of the 22nd on the day that Venus stations retrograde at 28 degrees and 36 minutes of Leo. And then the sun leaves Cancer and moves into Leo at 6:50 p.m., at least here in Los Angeles, on the 22nd of July.
Yeah, we have Venus retrograde at 6:33, and then 17 minutes later, Leo season. So we're entering Leo season with the Venus retrograde. Feels very symbolic and on the nose. And then, yeah, Venus is going to be in Leo, I think, till October 9th. So extra long Venus Leo time. So again, I think this Cancer season is, if there are like investment things or things that you might want to get done that are Venus related before this Venus retrograde, this is your sign. This is the thing. I had a sibling, sister-in-law who was moving. She was looking to move in that Venus-y time in this retrograde. She was like, what the hell does that mean? I was like, I don't know if that'll be your forever home. Like maybe it's just your landing pad. She did end up moving early and she was like, lucky me. If you have to do these Venus things, and we'll talk about Venus retrograde when it comes up, whatever. We have to live through astrology sometimes. But if you can have that control of like aesthetic things with Venus, money things, the things we like might be under reflection. And I think this can be actually really good artist retreat sort of time, not like something you pay a lot of money for, but I think maybe a self-appointed checking back in with the heart Leo things that are coming up as we usher in Leo season.
If you're curious about Venus retrograde, Venus does enter retrograde shadow just as Mercury does. That will be happening on the 19th of June. So that's coming up.
Right.
Maybe the day this is released. So
yeah, it was like all of Cancer season will be in the shadow.
Yeah. So we are,
and it is the day released, I think. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So I think, keeping that in mind going forward, it's similar to like the Mercury retrograde shadow, meaning that Venus has reached the degree it is going to retrograde back to, I believe. So that's if we're in territory for that Venus retrograde, those things might come back up too. So keep your journal
totally
tight.
I think this is a great season to really be aware, like you said, Lisa, of the kind of interconnectedness and cyclical nature of astrology, because that does really feel like, okay, all of Cancer season, we're reflecting on how these Venus in Leo things kind of make us feel. What's coming up for us now is going to be what's up for us during this retrograde period, even if it's not the literal same circumstances. Definitely our feelings, I think, around those things, and how do we, I think both Cancer and Leo are about relationships with ourselves. And I think that kind of like confidence and nurturing and caring, how do we do both of those things when we don't always feel like doing them? And I think that Leo is very much known, like you said, for the kind of more outward presentation and that like physical consistency, because again, ruled by the sun, whereas the moon in Cancer is more about kind of emotional flexibility, but kind of holding both of those things together. We also are at the time of the year when both of those things are kind of the fullest and brightest. That's where we get the seasons and their rulers. So I think that we kind of, at least here, know what I mean? It's everywhere because it's the peak time. We're at the points, the pinnacles. I was going to say, at least in the Western hemisphere. Sorry, my astronomy is subpar. But I mean, we can really like see it very visibly too. So I think remembering that too, that it's not, again, this kind of compassion thing too, that it's not just us. We're all experiencing brighter nights, warmer, brighter days, the sun at its fullest, the moon at its fullest. And so that's intense, but to remember that we're all doing it.
Yeah. And again, we'll talk all about it, but last one was in Leo, last Venus retrograde in Leo, July 25th through September 6th, 2015. So maybe some stuff from then.
40 days, 40 nights kind of thing too. I think remembering that too, that it's like, this is this too shall pass. And it is like a, what can we what can you do for a little bit longer than a month or whatever, that kind of thing, where it's like, you know, not to say that it's not tough, but I think remembering that of like those kind of incremental times to me are about learning specific intensified kind of lessons, because we are aware of the time period. It's not just like, you know, throughout. It's I don't know, there's something religious, or I mean, because I'm thinking specifically about Lent, obviously, but you know.
Yeah, but there's a lot of religions that actually do 40-day rituals, and and I think there's a lot of other things outside of religion that also do 40-day rituals. So we'll have to look into that when we talk about it.
But that's a big, you know, personal planet retrogrades, pretty big. Cancer season, our last little go before we get into the retrograde zone. And I don't know. I don't know if it should be fun. Well, probably be better than Gemini season. We'll find out. But
I think we can be more honest about it.
Yeah, Cancer. Exactly.
We're not going to be expected to be fun and light about it. I think that sometimes makes it more fun because the pressure is off to have it be a way that it's not. Cancer, you know, Cancer season already, I think, has some connotations to it as is. So I think we might be pleasantly surprised, or at the very least feel cleansed and properly emoted, ready for the consistency of Leo after that of kind of, you know, riding those waves. We're ready to lay on the sand and get some sun.
Yeah, I feel like any kind of small talk I've had to make in Gemini season's been so depressing. And now I'm like, well, at least with Cancer season, maybe we can talk about that depressing stuff at length and you know, really go more into it, and also feel more healed or processed around it.
Let us know. I was thinking about this at the beginning. Let us know how you guys like these season episodes, because I think it's an interesting way, because we're not breaking it down by like the month. I think what we've been talking about, a lot of this kind of cyclical astrology way, I think it's an interesting way to like learn about astrology and understand the connection between seasons. Let us know what you think about that. If this is a helpful way, I think we're going to continue this, you know, doing it this way, at least for the rest of the year, consistency wise. But I'm interested to know if this is helpful for people. Because actually, that was on my mind.
If 100% of you don't like it, we probably will change it.
We'll change it. That's a good way.
I don't think that's going to be the case, but I'm not going to commit to doing something literally everyone hates for the rest of the year.
I don't know.
Well, some people do like to think, I guess, like in the month, like, oh, the June overall forecast. I like thinking of it from sun sign to sun sign.
There are other podcasts that do months too. I feel like this is a good, like, you know, we're talking additional resources and stuff. Like, we use them all.
I think it's important to know when you're under what sun sign, but also, let us know, because we flexy out here.
Yeah, but it just was interesting to me. Not to, I feel like I don't have to spring this on us at the end.
No, it's fine.
You know,
I was just saying, like, I'm not going to commit 100 to like, a bunch of people being like, actually
hate it. It's a real impediment to my listening. No.
Thank you guys for listening.
Yes.
All right.
And that's it.
Happy Cancer season. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.